I've met someone I can trust. Time. I'm Miles Hartley, and I'm a 44-year-old business architect and sitting in my house in Savannah, Georgia, office, looking at my wife's email. Kendra was allegedly at a 12-year-old Arizona yoga retreat. The timestamp revealed that I had relocated at 11:22 p.m. your bequest into my own account. It's preferable this way. Was a fuzzy picture of her and a man were behind them, a sunset with a beard on a balcony, wine glasses. Her smile was different than since she hadn't given me anything in years. I closed my laptop, went to the kitchen, and poured a water glass, gazed out at the together. We had renovated the backyard through the stone pathway I laid years ago as she grew hydrangeas alongside the edges, everything that is useful for a house. She seemed to have no plans to attend returning to that cash, my aunt. Elaine's $587,000 wasn't merely, it stood for the woman who had adopted me following the death of my parents when I was 14 years old and had worked 2 shifts for the hospital to help me finish college, who was leaving everything to me with a single, straightforward note: create something that will last. I have no missed calls or texts on my phone, requesting that I check the email, just quiet, as though she had already moved on to the indicators had been there in her new existence. Kendra's yoga retreats had been going on for months. Increase in frequency from 2 days to 4 days turned into trips lasting a week. On tables, phones remained face down. Passwords altered, discussions shortened. She had inquired 3 months prior. Strange inquiries concerning the inheritance, where was the money exactly? Evaluates if diversification is necessary. Where it took place, I nodded and said, I reopened the laptop to give it some thought. Read the email once more and saw that she hadn't even bothered to say my name or greeting. Only the theft and the declaration. I composed a 6-word reply to express gratitude for informing me. I shut down the laptop. I went to bed after finishing my water. It would be a long day tomorrow, but sitting I realized I was alone in that king-size bed. A thing that ought to have disturbed me, however. I slept better knowing she wasn't there. Didn't I? Approaching, Kendra was unaware at home that I had a bad feeling months before. She had never been in possession of the inheritance. Believed it to be, and an effort to take it had just provided me with what I required. I met Kendra at a business event 15 years ago. Meeting in Charlotte. She was establishing her wellness company and searching for architect to create her initial. I spent 5 years in a brick-and-mortar business. My career is eager for tasks that weren't merely workplaces and parking constructions. We were married in 3, created a life in Savannah over the years where the company's headquarters were purchased. Victory Drive Craftsman with a wraparound porch that she had always desired. Children's Choice of Company is my baby. She would state that I realized my buildings. I designed her, and it worked for 8 years, developed her organic product line, and we hosted and traveled to wellness retreats. On paper, we looked fantastic at dinner parties, and in person, after which my Aunt Elaine received cancer quickly and brutally. Therefore, I took a 6-month leave of absence to take care of her. Kendra made 2 visits to Atlanta. Hospitals make me sad, she said. Didn't press it. She departed after Elaine passed away. The money stunned me in every way. I was unaware that she had invested. So over the years, Kendra appeared to startle by our newfound interest in budgeting and methods she would never be in. We ought to focus on growing the company, she proposed one evening. Her business, she meant over dinner, must consider what Elaine might. That was the first crack, as I mentioned. Others, little but noticeable, trailed Kendra, began taking additional study trips, and her calls turned into supplier meets. Shorter, frequently featuring voices in the background that became silent at my inquiry who she was with. Frank, our neighbor, visited one day as Kendra was in Sedona for a team retreat and observed last week. Someone dropped her off, said in a casual manner, wasn't it? I had assumed you were out of town. I praised him at the 3-day seminar in Boston. Him for his wife's baked bread. Sent over without asking any questions. Only after filing it away, the password appeared. Alters the locked banking apps when they'd never before discussed financial situation that suddenly ended when I asked particular questions. I discovered her on the phone one evening in the gentle laughter in the backyard. She stopped laughing with me. Simply, she said, "This is Patricia from the studio." Entering, Patricia, who had departed 8 months prior. I nodded. Didn't correct her, instead observing her. She added more wine to her glass and switched to the foundation was crumbling. Underneath us, with just one of us being truthful about it 2 weeks before, Kendra has decided to make her last escape. The financial advisor for my company called. There has been an attempt to get access to details regarding your trust accounts. Using your personal information that does not pass security procedures for which account I inquired about, I was previously aware of the inherited money. They attempted to use a final four of your social, but was unable to respond to security. I thanked him for the questions, hung up, and sat down. I spent a lot of time that evening at my workstation. Kendra requested that we streamline our accounts, having so many is silly, distinct passwords and logins, she stated. Avoiding eye contact, we should bring things together. You're most likely correct, I said. I'll speak with Jerry regarding it. The following day, I traveled to Atlanta and met with Rita Wallace, who has been my aunt's lawyer for 20 years later. I clarified my worries. Without feeling or making accusations, just information, your aunt was smart enough to recommend that Rita stated that the trust structure was irrevocable. The money is safe once I'm done, regardless of what occurs in your marriage, as well as if someone attempted to relocate those monies without Rita's expression hardened with authorization. That would be a financial fraud attempt. With unambiguous legal repercussions, I nodded. Let's record everything, and I'd like to arrange a surveillance system that notifies us of any attempt to relocate or alter everything pertaining to the trust that I received. Kendra had prepared her hideaway at home. She gave me a quick kiss and walked away. I may extend this far away. At the entrance, she said, really dive deep. I assisted her in loading her bags into the practice, watched her drive away after getting into her car. I went back inside, opened my laptop, and did not read her texts or emails. Didn't check on her or phone her pals. I just opened our shared location, cloud storage, where we stored our home documents, in the home folder suggestions for a renovation project that we talked about beginning this year. I discovered the documents I was seeking. She'd neglected to remove or relocate screenshots, copies of my statements and accounts remarks regarding transfer procedures, and a picture of figures on a whiteboard, my 20% of the inherited amount less the explanation of the note transfer fee that she had been after months of planning. I closed the folder, wondered about our home with its thoughtfully selected artwork and furnishings that described who we pretended to be. To be an experience, an odd sense of calmness. The betrayal wasn't shocking to me. What caught me off guard was my own reaction. Not anger or sorrow, but understanding, for I witnessed our marriage for the first time in years. Because it had turned into a deal, she was ending presently due to something more lucrative had arrived. I slept in the guest room that was provided. Night began placing calls. The following by 5 in the morning, her email had arrived. Days later, I got everything set up. Underway following receipt of Kendra's email, I waited a full day before creating my initial action. Elicited no feeling. Calls or texts that are desperate but methodical first. I spoke with Rita and Jerry, sending Kendra's email to them with a basic note-keeping ask for both verified receipts, but neither required an addition to justification. I then gave Thomas whether Rita had suggested a divorce lawyer. Months prior to one of our possible discussions, with his secretary arranged to meet that afternoon. Kendra had texted before midday, "Did you get my email?" I replied, "Yes, that's all you have to say," she said. Minutes later, I said, "I didn't. Instead, I took a car to Thomas." Rita joined us at the downtown office by video call. "The transfer attempt brings about a paper trail," Thomas clarified. Looking over the papers Rita sent, "There are several components that work to your advantage. The money was inherited and marital were never combined. Assets that are kept up to date in a trust framework, and she has now publicly acknowledged making an unauthorized effort. Access the file I requested for what comes next. Divorce with immediate financial grounds. Georgia is not a no-fault state for misbehavior. Declare that I sign when fraud is involved." The documents before departing his workplace. My phone rang at 4:30 p.m., and Kendra's name appeared. "You're acting like a child on the TV," she stated. "No greeting, no how." When I responded, "Are you saying that this need not be challenging?" "I agree. So let's be adult about this. The funds are already moved to fight. It will only use up more energy. By way of legal fees, where are you lodging?" I inquired, shifting the topic, and she hesitated. "Unbalanced? What's that important? Just wondering how many kilometers home is now." "Focus. We must talk on the financial arrangements that my lawyer is drawing from me up settlement documents. It's more beneficial, for we need to both keep this tidy." "Who's your?" I questioned David Lawrence, a lawyer, and is already going over all of my writing, jotting down the name. "That's useful. Many thanks." "Are you even paying attention?" "Miles, you mentioned that it doesn't have to be difficult. Things I already spoke about in a neutral tone." Thank you for this. Take a moment to relax. What are you doing? Nothing yet, adjusting to the notion that I suppose I could hear her unwinding on the other end, misinterpreting my composure, as she stated that her resignation was for the best. Lowering her voice as we've been negotiating varying paths for years. This is rather than prolonging it. Yes, I think that a cleaner environment is preferable. I contacted Thomas again after we hung up and handed information on David Lawrence. Then I sent Kendra a single text message while taking some processing time. We'll get in touch when I'm prepared to talk specifics of her response. Don't wait too long for paperwork. We'll be prepared by perfect timing for Friday, and 3 days away. Rita called the trust company around 6 p.m. has documented 3 distinct attempts to stop the trust transfers. All accounts are currently fully documented and blocked, and the surveillance system recorded every IP address and login attempts timestamps that correspond to the access location when the email first appeared, not Sedona, Rita, but Arizona, Scottsdale. Paused. The system has identified more unusual behavior from a previous month. Someone exported account information and procedures for transfers while logged in. We have access to your home network. Device and timestamps. I thanked her and hung up. Identifiers strolled around the now vacant house that felt less like a home and more like proof, and I opened the bottle in the kitchen of 20-year-old whiskey that we had been putting aside for 2 fingers poured on our 15th anniversary. Into a glass that Kendra believed she had set. She was unaware that she had fallen into the trap. The following morning, straight into one herself. When David Lawrence called, his tone was, "Mr. Hartley, I'm being cautious professionally. Speaking on behalf of your wife and your separation, she has stated that you're unable to reach a simple agreement. Is it a slight that she said? With difficulty, she said, you understand. Which scenario would that be? Especially another delay in the divide of possessions, including a recent inheritance funds. Has she provided you with proof of she has given statements regarding these monies? Stated cautiously. Fresh ones from about 3 months ago. I wrote down and moved. She has confirmed that those are coming from the bank, which I notice I kept. Requesting an urgent meeting tone. Notably altered by the time I got back to the image in Thomas's office was becoming. The Northern Lakes account was more transparent. Opened in Kendra's 8 months ago. Name alone. The listed address was in total of an apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona. Withdrawals from our joint accounts from $178,000 to $250. She has been constructing a new life for some time, Thomas noted. I can still access mine, though. Furthermore, we were looking over the bank records. When David was announced by Thomas's assistant, I got a call with Lawrence on it. The trust records, Lawrence stated, he said in a strained voice. My client might have misrepresented a few elements of the monetary circumstances, including her capacity to access those monies or move them. Thomas inquired. That seems to be the situation. Lawrence acknowledged that in light of this new information that I think would be advantageous for everyone to talk about, and my client has already adopted a redesigned strategy. Filed for divorce, claiming financial difficulties. Misconduct. Thomas responded by documentation speaks for itself. Following conclusion of the call. Thomas, he'll stop using her as a customer after looking at me. At the end of the day, no qualified lawyer wishes to be connected to this about the money she did, in fact, take from the combined accounts, which we will incorporate. Everything in the filing document allowed her justify her actions to a judge. Built a covert home and regularly depleted marital resources, nodded, experiencing an unusual sense of hollowness. Betrayal was more profound than I had anticipated. This was deliberate rather than rash. Planned while she slept for months. Made plans while eating across from me. There's one more thing I mentioned. Must be aware of who he is, not for conflict, not even for the divorce procedures, that I only needed to comprehend the entirety of what I had overlooked while constructing what I believed to be a life. Thomas nodded with him, saying, I'll have someone. Looked into my doorbell that night. Rang, and when I opened it, a courier was there, possessing in delivery of Miles Hartley's envelopes, claimed there was a note from David inside. Lawrence is officially stepping down as the legal counsel for Kendra, with copies were submitted to the court and Kendra. There was a note attached from my phone lit up when Thomas first landed a domino. A few minutes later, Kendra, I let her call go to voicemail. Made 3 additional calls before sending a "what the devil did you do?" text. I didn't react when you eat a sandwich at the kitchen counter. I got an email from Rita with a headline that just read, Update. The credibility business had finished looking into that they recorded several attempts at access. illegal efforts throughout a 3-month period, all recorded in thorough logs with IP. The report's addresses and timestamps were enclosed with confirmation that they'd sent the case to their legal department. Department for Possible Criminals Examination. You don't need to do anything right now. Rita wrote, however, note that this route is currently open. I sent Thomas everything. After 9 p.m., another text message arrived from I said, we need to talk now. Kendra, through your just-hired lawyer when you've totally overreacted, and I wasn't angry when I sent that email. Move anything at all, that's not what. There's a lengthy gap in the access logs. Before what access logs does she send next? I emailed one query rather than a response. Who is after 20 minutes? This isn't concerning him. Long delay again. Jason. But it's not Barkley as an important last name, but is merely a friend that is supporting me during this. You're concentrating on the incorrect thing. Didn't reply anymore, but Jason Barkley was found when the name was searched. She was a yoga studio instructor and a former investment broker from Scottsdale based on his left-hand LinkedIn profile 3 years ago in the finance sector to want deeper, more significant relationships. I met with Frank our next morning. The neighbor you witnessed dropping Kendra. I started. Do you recognize him? Once more. Frank nodded slowly, his beard towering. I showed him the gray Tesla that he drives. This is the picture from Kendra's email. Squinting at the picture, that is, that he may have visited here 5 or 6 times. I thanked him while you were traveling. Inquired if he would be prepared to supply. He concurred with the statement with hesitation. Thomas called at 11 a.m. We have a problem. Kendra was hired. There was a notoriety for Philip Barnes. For combative divorce proceedings costly, but he has demanded an emergency as of right now. Hearing to challenge the financial. Thomas goes on to make an accusation of misbehavior. His client has proof of all financial decisions were deliberated and decided upon. When is a 3-day hearing on Monday morning? I thought of the flat in the distance. The Northern Lakes account for Scottsdale. Jason, the man who had been in my Let's Give Bond the house while I was away. I mentioned things to consider. In the afternoon, Thomas brought a package to Bond's workspace with copies of all of the trust access logs, bank documents demonstrating consistent cancels the lease of the flat, in the notarized statement of Scottsdale Frank about screenshots and Jason's visits from Kendra's ideas for remodeling her house packet, including her instructions on how to. Thomas, please access my account by 5 p.m. Got a call from Bonds asking for a pressing gathering to talk about settlement. His scene. Enough? Thomas said of the alternatives. Following that, I offered a clean split. She maintains what she has previously taken, so it doesn't further assertions that you maintain everything else encompassing the home and the entire inheritance. I answered, counter, she gives back half of the amount she took from the joint. Accounts and executes a non-disclosure agreement. Pact, I don't go after the scam. Thomas arched an eyebrow at you. The consultation space, as Thomas described the words, that Kendra would move $89,275, half of what was taken out of the joint returns the accounts in a day. She would don't claim the inheritance. If any additional resources, she would sign a non-disclosure contract that keeps her from talking about our divorce or marriage without exchanging anything with anyone. Pursue any accusations of fraud pertaining to the attempted embezzlement of trust assets by recognize her face as Thomas through the glass walls. Transferred the evidence file. Pictures, statements, and account entry for her. The look changed from one of defiance to startled by what seemed to be a defeat. She looked across to the room where I was sitting at the time. Bonds reviewed but quickly glanced away. Everything is hunched over to whisper. 10 minutes later, she nodded slowly in her ear. Later, they came in saying, my client agrees to the conditions. Bonds said. Thomas formally slid the agreement. Kendra signed across the table without her penmanship as unsteady when reading it, but decided that after signing my part, I slid a different envelope to her. The first thing she said was, what's this? When she repeated the passwords, I said, to the house alarm system for cloud storage. If not, you may have to get whatever you left behind. At last, her gaze found mine. In search of rage or victory, she didn't appear any more lost than I had. Have you ever seen her? I said it was never about the money. That would have been easier to do in private. Bonds put his hand on her elbow and led her to stand. She held the envelope tightly while 6 months after leaving, I never looked back. Too many people bought the Victory Drive mansion. Too many memories to paint. Empty rooms over a young family with new owners. The twins cherished the enclosed porch and the I move hydrangeas along the stone path. to a loft within walking distance of the downtown. Less furniture was purchased for my company's office. Kept less of the things that Rita gave me. Transformed my aunt's estate into a foundation for architectural scholarships for children whose parents have passed away. The initial beneficiary was a 17-year-old South Georgian girl whose essay about creating healing environments struck a chord with the selection committee. Rita remarked Elaine would have adored her. When the scholarship was given out, I often thought about my aunt. Sensibleness in her demand that making anything valuable is necessary. Equal portions of eyesight and vigilance. While gathering mail one afternoon in my building's foyer, I discovered an envelope without a return address was a tick for precisely $8,927 plus a quick statement on the remaining, not simply the money, but also what I owed. No signature required that night. I went down to the riverbank where Kendra and I used to discuss starting a cooperative venture. I would create a wellness area, and she would run a dream that had long since died. Prior to our union, had I watched cargo while perched on a bench? The check is still in my pocket after ships pass. I would put it in tomorrow. Another scholarship through the foundation account, another opportunity to construct something that my phone rang with a text message that might last. Jerry's dinner is still going on at 7. Delivering the architect I indicated, took a quick look at my watch to stroll home, get dressed, and go to the restaurant enough time to make a decision to accept whatever came my way next. I responded to the text and turned to face the sometimes the strongest response is in the evening. Betrayal is not retaliation. Rather, it's rebuilding.